Okay, for this step, we're going to use these self-drilling screws. We're going to use the piece that we just assembled with the stepper motor, and we're going to attach it on the top. Do my best to get that in there. We're also going to need the lead screw. Going to screw the lead screw down into the block that we have inside there. About halfway is what it says. Then we're going to put the stepper motor on. We're going to use these self-threading screws. And the back of this plate should be flush. I think it would be wise to take your time putting these in, because I think you could probably break one off in there pretty easily. One thing I want to point out is don't get this screw mixed up with the 1.5. It says in the instructions this is a 10 by 1 inch, so don't use the longer one. That would also cause you to possibly break one off in there. Now that we got it tightened, I'm going to slide this back on there. And then make sure that the coupling, make sure that it slides in the coupling good. For the next step, you're going to need this plate, this plastic. It's called a UHMW plastic. It's really strong, high wear. You're going to need the M5 nylon nuts, 2 of those. You're going to need the 2 M5 by 12 machine screws, and you're going to need the 10 by 1 self-drilling screws for this piece. You're going to take the Z-base plate and your M5 screw and nut, and the nut, it shows that facing up, so that's what I'm gonna do. Oops. And I'm gonna make sure mine is just flush with that. Maybe just so it's straight. I don't know. It's not important. It may be important. I don't know. But I'm gonna make it straight as I can. Now you're ready to assemble it onto the base onto the base. The thing I mentioned was that divot. That is going to line up with that. Using your self-threaded, self-tapping screws. Go ahead and put that together. That's funny. We'll do that as a blooper, right? This whole thing will be a blooper. Mine sat in there, doesn't appear to be in any bind, so I think we're okay on that. One thing I'll mention on this, at first I tightened it, but I think the smart thing to do would be to leave these loose, and I think it actually says that in the instructions, so that if there's a slight misalignment in the rod, that it will actually line up in there a little bit better, and then you could tighten these. As long as you're sure that it's seated down in there and that it's not in any bind side to side, then you could snug those up. Okay, you already saw me struggling with the other Allen wrench I had. Now, following the directions for preload on the lead screw, I'm gonna do that right now. I think I've actually got it where it needs to be, so I'm gonna just check it. You saw me struggling with my Allen wrenches earlier, so I went and got this. Maybe it'll make my life a little bit easier going forward. I'll back it off a little bit. Seems tight. Yeah, that's way better. Okay. Now I want to make sure that when it's up, it turns easily, and when it's down, it turns easily. And it turns easily now that it's down, so let me go up. It is touching there, and it's smooth. So I think I got the right amount of preload on it. This is not binding, so we're good. I had loosened these earlier, and now that I'm sure that this is not in any bind, I'm gonna go ahead and snug it back up. think it actually, that's in the instructions, I believe it tells you do that. And I'm going to check it now that I got it tightened back up and it's good. So I think this step, I think is probably good. Let's see what's next. Either I missed the step or I don't see it in the literature here, but the part that I was missing was tightening this coupler. It's nice and free, so I know it's not binding. So maybe it's time to tighten it. I'm going to push this down to the bottom and I'm going to snug that. And I don't know that that's right, but I'll find out later. Just because I just don't see it. I don't know if I'm skipping it or what, but anyway. I'm going to tighten the coupler. I'm just putting light pressure down to the bottom to make sure that it's touching so that I don't have a gap, I'll call it. I'm just going to tighten that up. And I think I'm good on that. So let's finish. That's finishing this step. I'm actually excited for this part. We're going to build the gantry now. You need to use these 10x1 self-drilling screws. You need your two, I'm going to call them end plates, but they're Y idler end plate and Y motor end plate. Motor, Y end plate. And you're going to need the 613 millimeter. Be sure it's the 613 millimeter. Don't get them mixed up. The other ones are shorter. The 2040 extrusions. I'm going to do my best to keep this part in frame. Just a little tip. Not that I'm going to have a lot of tips, but one thing I would recommend is don't run out to your garage and grab your impact. But run out to your garage and grab some lubricant. I don't want you to think it's a specific one. Lubricant. Spray the ends and then just thread them in by hand with the wrench one time and then back them out and then thread them in the second time for final assembly. If you happen to have an extra pair of hands, you can lend them to me right now. That's one. Okay, now it's time for the second one. See, because I started those in one time before I started trying to do this. That one actually screwed in by hand a little ways. I'm going to do my best to keep this part in frame. Just a little tip. Not that I'm going to have a lot of tips, but one thing I would recommend is don't run out to your garage and grab your impact. But run out to your garage and grab some lubricant. I don't want you to think it's a specific one. Lubricant, spray the ends, and then just thread them in by hand with the wrench one time, and then back them out, and then thread them in the second time for final assembly. If you happen to have an extra pair of hands, you can lend them to me right now. That's one. I wanted to mention was I'm doing this on this table for you guys to see, but after I get it mostly together, what I've done is I've taken it over to a super flat surface. I've loosened these screws on the outside just gently, made sure that the back of these plates are both touching, and then snug this up so that I know this rail is not twisted in any way. Okay, next. Remember I was telling you before, those notches indicate where the wheel goes in or out. Turn your notches on your wheels towards the bottom of your plate on both this wheel and this wheel. That way, those wheels will be opened up and make space to fit on here, okay? Now, according to the instructions, we're going to slide this on. Just like that. Now that you have that on, you're going to take this and also put it on. have that on. The directions say to make sure that these turn, but it's not loose. You can turn those with your finger, okay? And then you can adjust if needed on these eccentric spacers. Okay, I have my boards. I decided to seal them up with orange also after I put the white epoxy on. What I'm reading in the documentation is that this orientation is correct. What you're looking for is this hole right down here. It's the only hole that is not in order or the same sequence, and that should be the bottom left, we'll say bottom left side, and that tells you that that's the right orientation. There won't be anywhere else except for just the ones that match the T-track. You'll also need your T-track and a hammer. It says you'll need a hammer and that they're a tight fit. And so let's get started putting them in. Okay, that wasn't so bad. I didn't need a hammer yet, so I think we're good there. Now the instructions say after putting them in, flip these boards over, and what I did was I put my indicator hole right here, and that keeps the bottom or the front to the front or whatever. And it says to place the base, I'm gonna call it the base, I think that's what they call it, the same way with the indicator hole as you had it a little while ago. Well, you may not have, but that same indicator hole is right here that matches the indicator hole that's right here, except for these of course are crossed. And then you know you have that orientation correct, and on the top board you know you have it correct because of the two corner holes. Now of course the board out holes go up. Okay, the screws you're going to need are this M4 nylon nuts, M420 machine screws, and M4 flat washer. And there are 32 of them, so you might be here a while. It says to put one screw through the T-track into the hole, and then a washer and a nut. Once you get your nut in there, good luck. If you don't have a socket that will fit down in there, I might have to get one, because I don't think my screwdriver will fit that. Might. Nah, it's not gonna fit. Should have checked it right here. Not. So I'm going to get a small socket to fasten that with. what I did was I just slid the edge of my board off to the side so I could get this one started. And one thing it mentions in the instructions, it's not new, be sure that these sides are perfectly lined up widthwise and not hanging over or sticking out anyway. Okay, now I've got one screw in every hole on this line, and I've kind of pressed these together on the ends to meet up, and I've tightened the two end screws, one here and one over here. Now I'll tighten all the rest on that row, and I'll put some more in, get everything lined up, and I'll just continue the whole process. I'm not going to bore you with that. Okay. This step here, you're going to need the 5/16 washers, the square nuts, and the 5/16 bolts. These notches will line up with these two bolt holes, and these grooves that you see here are supposed to face the inside towards that. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but that's how it should look. Gonna put a nut down in there and there, and we're gonna just get those started. One full turn is what it says. Okay. What I want to mention is that I forgot to tell you to check to make sure that this is the front, this is the back, but if you don't remember when you flipped it, be sure you check and make sure that indicator hole is on this side of your board, on this end. That way you won't get it backwards. So it says to slide this off the edge of the table and make sure that the bottom of this board is flush to the bottom of this base, and then tighten these. So that's what I've done, and it's important to make sure that it is even all the way crossed and that it's not crooked one way or the other this way. Now we'll start putting the corner brackets in. You're gonna need the brackets, of course, and the M6 flat washers, the M530 machine screws, and the M640 machine screws. It says 2 of those M640s and 2 of the M530s, and the brackets and washers and nuts. Okay, after a minute going through the bags and everything, I finally figured out all the pieces that I need for the section. The way it's all worded in the literature, you're going to see a lot of information. It's going to be a little bit broken up. So basically you need this stuff right here, and assembled in this way, basically, right? and then you can start. That'll help you. Okay, flat washer on the outside. Push through. Lock washer. And the nut. And then the same thing on the bottom. I may have that wrong. I don't know. It seems like it's a little bit confusing. Maybe this goes like this. And then it wants Okay, I think I got the confusion cleared up now. I'm gonna have to use a washer on here. I just grabbed them. These are M5 flat washers. The reason it kind of was weird to me is the hole on the back side of this here is the same size, it seems like, as the one for the M640. So I was like, why is that? That's weird. So after you do that, you're gonna put a split washer. Not sure why, because this is a nylon washer, a light nylon hex nut, unless I got the wrong one. And I did. So that's why you don't use the nylon, because those aren't the correct ones for this. Supposed to use the M5 hex nut. It's kind of, in my case, it's kind of a gold color. And then you put that through on there, and then you bolt it. The instructions say leave a 1/64 of an inch between this backboard and the bracket. I'm calling that like about the thickness of a fingernail. So if you can fit your fingernail in there, that should be about 1/64 of an inch. Tighten the bottom one, then tighten this. Not really enough room in there for a wrench, so if you got needle nose, now is the time to use them. Okay, we're just going to repeat that on this side. Same thing, fingernail, bolt, flat washer, nut, Tighten that up. What I can tell now, looks like we're going to be mounting these and these. These are, of course, these are the 593 millimeter rails, and then we're going to use these 1.5 self drilling screws. We'll need 4 of those and both of the motor mounts. It says to put these screws in here, in these holes down here, about 1 inch deep. They're actually pretty snug, so they do kind of thread in there. And now it says go ahead and stick the extrusion on and tighten it up. Being careful not to break the bolts off in the extrusion by over tightening them too much. And the recommendation is to do them evenly, a couple turns on each one, and then a couple turns on the other one, because if you start pulling them down unevenly, they'll get in a bind and then break off. And you want this flush with the top and even on the side. Going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Place the corner bracket in the corner where the V slot and the rear frame meet. I'm so sorry for all this dead air. I'm gonna need the T-nut, slide it in the end, down like that. Okay, you're going to get a 1/4 bracket, and I'm going to use this short screw that was there, the M5, with a lock washer, and that is going to go into the corner of the T-nut. I got this on, and now I'm just going to tell you, I was not able to get the lock washer on here. I tried everything. So it's just going to have to not be on there for now. I'll figure something out later. Anyway, we're going to take the other screw. We're going to put that M530 with a washer on it through the other side. And then we need a lock washer. And the regular nut, just like the one we used on the bottom. Tighten that up, you'll be good. Repeat this on the other side. That's it. We're going to slide the gantry on. I've already moved my wheels out on both sides so I have space. And sits on there like that. Okay, I got the gantry on, and it's actually on the right way, not backwards. Pretty cool. Okay, so got the gantry slid all the way back. I did notice that it touches on one side before it touches the other. Not sure. Gantry is on, and it's touching on the right side before it touches on the left side when sliding it all the way back. Not sure what's causing that. Maybe somebody can give me a tip on what's the easiest way to correct that. If not, I'll go along with trying to correct it myself. Maybe when I put the front on, it will correct itself. We'll see. Now I'm going to put the front on. Okay, just like you did the back earlier, you're going to take your two remaining 5/16 square nuts and bolts, put them in with a washer on top. Then you're going to stick them inside the holes down in the bottom. And just push them down in there. And of course, slide the end of the table off, the table. And be sure that those are down in there all the way and flush with the bottom of this. And then next we'll be putting these screws in the end, I believe. Okay, once you got it all flush on the bottom, start tightening it up. Okay, now we're going to take the screws with some washers, and then we're going to put them in through these holes. Repeat this on both sides. Make sure that this is flush with the side. And then tighten it down. And I'll tell you again, I went ahead and ran these bolts into this aluminum first before I started putting this together, just to keep it from being so hard to turn. Basically, I threaded them. Do the same thing on the other side. I won't bore you with that. I need to put the corner brackets on. So 2 corner brackets, the 640 machine screws, flat washers, locking washers, and the M6 nut. Also, we're going to end up using some 530 machine screws, lock washers, nuts, and flat washers. And we're basically going to duplicate what we have back there now. And this is what you're going to need on each side to do this. Washer through the bottom, bracket, washer, nut, bolt, washer, washer, and nut. Now just tighten it up, but leave a 64th back. That way it'll pull this back straight.